Here's our kitchen, and we have just recently gotten new counters and we had the cabinets painted. Now I had to remove some of the top and the bottom of the backsplash already, but I do have to deal with the rest of that backsplash, so let's get into it. But before you start going after it with a pry bar, one thing you want to do is remove your plates and kill the electricity, because you never know what's going on behind there. It's always a good idea to have the power off in the wall that you're working on. Now you can just channel your inner Hulk and smash that drywall out. But make sure that your inner Bruce Banner scores the outer edges first. If you're ripping off big chunks, it could easily bring along a piece of the wall that you didn't mean to take. All right, so here is a great reason why you just don't want to go and zap through this thing with a Sawzall or even a multi-tool. So this is my breaker box. This is my main box that is on the other side of this wall, which is actually right at the stairwell of the shop. So don't do the power tools, do it by hand. And if you start seeing wires, just make sure you're careful. And again, have your power off if you need to be safe. Now you can use a level or a straight edge to make a line about an inch below the cabinets. Now this way, you won't bang up your cabinets too much during the removal, and you'll have some extra room to smooth that seam when you start filling it in. All right, so when you get to the edge of the drywall patch, you want to take some care into how you end it. I don't want to go all the way up into this door jamb, because that would be really hard to fade it in and make it look good. So I want to end it somewhere over here. If I cut my line down where the paint is, then I would just be free floating in midair, and I would have to brace everything behind it, and that could get a little dicey. I used a little piece of wood centered on that 2x4 so that I could score down the line, and I would have full support for the drywall that I was installing, as well as the existing drywall. Now leaving a little bit of drywall there at the bottom is also going to make that part easier to fill in with joint compound later. I switched over to the other area of the backsplash, and I am so glad that I didn't use a Sawzall here. There's a 220 volt electrical line for my range, and I even had a couple CPVC water lines that were running right behind the backsplash. And if I damaged either of those, I would be having a very bad day. All right, now that I've got the opening all cleaned up, I can measure for my drywall insert, and I'm going to use some leftover drywall that I had, so I might have to patch it in there a little bit. But the main thing is measuring where all of my outlets are, so I can notch the holes in, so I can put that up and make sure that everything sticks through properly. Now, since the drywall is going to be covered by tile, you can be a little looser than normal with your measurements here. I gave the outlets a good 1/4 inch more buffer than I would normally do, just to make that patch fit a little bit easier in there. I'm using green board, which is a mold resistant drywall, but it's just because I had it left over from my bathroom remodel. All you need to cut the drywall is a straight edge and a utility knife, and you can just snap that right in half. To make the notches and the holes, I prefer the good old fashioned jab saw. Now these are cheap, they work quick, and they're easy to control. And I didn't have a big enough piece of drywall to cover the opening in large sections, so it's kind of like solving a jigsaw puzzle to make it all fit on the studs for attachment. But I was bound and determined not to spend that extra $10 on another piece of drywall, even if I had to grind it up and like paper mache this thing together. Luckily, I had just enough. We get the drywall all up. I did have a couple tricky spots. There was a little gap I had to fill under the microwave, but now it is time to fill all those seams. And I want to first make sure that on the seams, on the outside especially, everything is smooth, and I've gotten rid of all the loose paper as well as any bumps and things. So I did that with a knife as well as a scraper, so I can have a good surface for the drywall compound. Now this can be your easiest mudding job ever, because basically you're just trying to smooth things out for the tile to have a flat install surface, not that it's going to look good. So I didn't tape any of the seams that'll be covered by the mastic and tile later. Now I did tape the seams on the sides though, because I'm not sure exactly how far out I'm going to go with the tile, but there'll be a transition at some point there. And the tape is going to strengthen that joint and prevent cracking in the future. I went in pretty heavy with the first coat to fill in any large gaps, and then I let it dry. I came back and I sanded everything smooth and knocked down any ridges or big humps on the drywall, and then I also made sure to come back with a second coat and blend everything together on the edges and make it smooth, so when I paint the transition, it's going to look good. All right, we're ready for tile, and I'm going with a classic subway tile look in a brick pattern. I think it's gonna look great with the white cabinets and a little bit of contrast for the gray counters. So before I get started, the most important thing is to make sure I've got a level surface. Now, I know I have one because we just had these counters installed and they leveled those, but I'm gonna go ahead and throw a level up there just to confirm it and make sure that we're starting at a good level. But don't assume that your counters are level, make sure you check them. When you're deciding where to start the tile on the backsplash, I always think about starting at the spot that's the most visible. So for me, it's gonna be right here. But because of the brick pattern, that also means I need to start with 3 half tiles. So I'm gonna grab the tile cutter, get that going, strike my straight line, and then we can get into the install. I made marks at 3 inches on the tiles for my edge pieces. And make sure to cut to the side of that line so that you'll actually have a 3-inch piece when you're done, versus just cutting the tile right down the middle, which would give you 2 slightly smaller than 3-inch pieces. So I cut the tiles down to size on the tile cutter, but honestly, the edge does not look great where the cut is. There is some chipping. That's just the nature of an abrasive cutting wheel. So I actually grabbed this snap cutter. These things are only like 25 bucks, so these are really inexpensive, and they make a lot cleaner cut. So I cut these guys with the snap cutter, and the line on it is really crisp because it's just a score line versus an abrasive cut like it is with the tile saw. So I will use the tile saw when I'm notching around these outlets, but for these initial end cuts, this snap line is actually going to look a lot better than the tile saw one. Now before jumping into the tiling, I rolled out some protective floor covering over the counters. I had this on hand, but you could also use cardboard or old drop cloths. You just want to protect the counters. I struck a line down from the edge of the upper cabinets, and now I can start in on the first row and edge. I'm using a type 1 adhesive from Map-I, and on the container it tells you exactly what type and size trowel to use for the tiles that you have based upon their size. I found it easier to spread the adhesive with a smaller drywall knife and then come back and rake it in with the trowel at a steep angle to give me the ridges that I needed. I used some of the spacers under my first row of tiles to raise them off the counter, and then I spaced them evenly, making sure to pay close attention to that layout line. The transition between the old and the new drywall wasn't perfectly flat. I noticed a dip between the first half tile there and the next full tile. So to level it out, I actually pulled that full tile off and I put some more adhesive on the back of it. So don't be afraid to pull the tiles down if they're not looking right. You'd rather do it now than deal with it later. I filled in the tiles on that layout line, and then I came back and cut a tile to fit to the right of the outlet, which only needed a straight cut, which was nice. So I'm coming up on the other side of this switch, and I obviously don't have a tile to reference against. So a way that you can get around that is to take your tile and mark a little line, a little mark right on the center of the tile. Now I can use that mark to center it on the joint below that. Because it's a brick pattern, it'll line up nicely, and it's a great way to overcome not having a tile to butt it up against for reference. I like working in a diagonal line from the bottom to the top, just like a stair step. It seemed to help me keep things aligned better doing it that way. I worked my way up with full tiles until I ran into the outlets to work around. I wasn't too scientific with marking here since the wall plates are going to cover any indiscretions, so I used the old eyeball ruler to estimate the gaps. And if you really want to be a cowboy, you can just draw those lines by hand. But let's not get crazy here. A machinist square is clearly needed to draw the lines that I eyeballed.
Clearly.
Now to make notch cuts like this, you really need some type of diamond cutting blade. I'm using my tile saw, but you can get blades for a 4-inch grinder as well. I nibbled out the inside of the notch with a series of cuts. But to get a flat edge at the bottom of the notch, you're going to have to tilt the tile up into the blade because of the circular nature of the blade. But with little practice, these come out pretty good and are definitely passable. Now from here, it's just a bit of rinse and repeat, working down the wall. Now the adhesive is messy though, and it gets everywhere, so try your best to keep the tiles and the gaps clean and wipe it off as you work. Also, I found that if I tried to put too many tiles in, it was hard to adjust them, so I started working in smaller sections and putting in the spacers as soon as I could. Because a few times I waited too long, and as I tried to put in the spacers and move the tile, it had already started to set up a bit too much. Though this whole process is not as easy as it might seem. All right, guys, I am plowing through this, but I am on the struggle bus. I know a lot of you guys say that I make things look easier. When it's edited, it looks easy. This has definitely been a struggle for me. And I don't know if it's just the adhesive, which is a lot more thin than like the mastic that I set tile with typically, but I've been really having a hard time with this. Oh, jeez. Oh, shoot. Boy, come on, I just put you in there. What in the fruitcake? Oh, what is going on? What's going on here? Oh, gosh. Oh, gosh. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. This is horrible. So this is not as easy as it looks, but we can plow through it. You just gotta keep focused, keep going, and having towels and things to clean up with. Just have a bunch of stuff available for you. Have a bunch of different little, what is this thing? Putty knife, drywall knives. You can see I'm a little bit flustered because this has been a challenge, but we're gonna get it done. I'm gonna finish through here and then jump over to the other side. But this stuff is kicking my butt. I was clearly running low on energy and patience. I think my Mountain Dew levels were probably running a bit too low, but I went ahead and pushed through it. Now, pretty much every DIY project is gonna be a challenge in the midst of it, but just press through and know that the reward at the end is gonna be worth it. All right, I got it all finished up, and even though it was a struggle, I think it turned out pretty well. And just a little tip on keeping the straight lines, just kind of look down from the side and sight down to keep everything in order, because you can't really put a level on there with all the spacers. Or you could use a laser level. That would really help and make things a lot easier, but it does kind of get in the way as well. But I'm finished up with this side. Now all I have to do is do it all over again over there. And while I'm installing the other side, let's talk about today's sponsor, WD-40 brand. Now, doing home improvement projects is a great way to add value to your house, but as a homeowner, you're going to have a lot of repairs and maintenance that you're going to also have to keep on top of. WD-40 brand has a full line of specialist products to help you keep your home in top shape. So whether you're silencing a squeaky door with a specialist dry lube, getting your garage door rolling smoothly with their specialist white lithium grease, or removing rust on your tools with specialist rust remover soak, WD-40 brand has you covered. Now those are 3 of my favorites, and I'm going to have links below in the description. You can go check those out and help you maintain your house and keep it in top shape. A big thanks to WD-40 brand for sponsoring today's video. I finished off the side by cutting the top row down to size and back buttering the tiles to install them. And when I put in that last corner piece, I was done with the tile install and I could let them sit overnight. Right, the tile is set and I'm getting ready to grout. I'm gonna go with a pre-mixed grout. This actually has some additives in it, so you don't have to seal it later. It's gonna make it really nice and easy, plus it's a small area. Now I have to remove all the little spacers and also get off any of the adhesive that's left over, so I'm gonna use a little white Scotch-Brite pad and just scrub through there, clean it all up, and then we'll be ready to put in some grout. The Scotch-Brite pad works great for small streaks of adhesive, but one of my favorite scrapers, my fingernail, works in a pinch. And for really heavy stuff, a razor blade is great. Just make sure you get all that adhesive off before you start grouting. Now, grouting is a pretty straightforward but messy job. Now, along with protecting the counters, I put a strip of tape on the edges so that I could protect the wall as well, and I wet down the tiles before I got started, which will help with releasing the grout later. Now, I used a small trowel to transfer the grout from the bucket to a rubber float. Now, starting out, you can just push it right in, or you can rake across the tiles at 90 degrees to get that excess grout into the gaps. After working for 5 or 10 minutes, you need to start doing an initial clean with this premixed variety. It dries extremely fast and it will already start hardening on the surface of the tiles. Then I used a damp sponge in a circular motion to loosen the grout that was on the tile surface, and I was wringing it out frequently in a water bucket. Now when the bulk of that loose grout was gone, I switched over to a clean sponge and drug it across the tiles with some slight pressure. Now this helps remove more of that grout off the tiles, but it also shapes the grout lines. Also, you want to keep the sponge clean, so only make one pass with each edge and keep turning and flipping it. After just a few minutes, the grout looked pretty good, and then I moved on to the next section and repeated the process, cleaning as I went. It's been a pretty long time since I've done vertical tiling, but the process did start to come back to me. To keep the grout from falling off and flying all over the place, it's better to push the grout up the wall versus down. I don't know, like gravity or something? After cleaning that section, I jumped over to the other wall under the microwave, and I really started getting into a groove. Now this whole area only took me about 15 or 20 minutes, including the initial cleaning and getting most of that grout off. I say most of it because there still will be a little bit left over, and there'll also be some grout haze after everything dries. So I came back and I cleaned it off with a damp microfiber cloth and used a dry cloth to buff it after that. Now using a raking light really works well here so that you can see the haze on the tile and get rid of it. You really want to try to get off as much as you can, because the longer this sits on the tile, the harder it will be to remove. So if you come back the next day or a week later, it's going to be a lot tougher than it will be now. The next morning, I painted those places that I had patched the drywall, and then I sealed around the tiles with a color-matched caulk. Now, I'd highly recommend picking up one of these caulk smoothing tools to help you out. And it didn't work great on that top joint, but it was perfect on the sides and on the countertop joint. This subway tile backsplash really pulls the whole kitchen together in that bright modern look that we were going for. Now, install can be a challenge at times, but you'll forget all about that when you step back and see the finished result. If you want to check out some more home improvement projects, I've got a playlist queued up for you right there. I think you're going to love those. And if you're not subscribed already, we'd love to have you as part of the team. And we do want to give a big thank you to all those folks that are part of the FTBT Builders Club. Until next time, guys, get out there and build something awesome.